This episode of Distraction is sponsored by Landmark College, offering comprehensive support for students with ADHD and other learning differences. Learn more at lcdistraction.org. Landmark College, the college of choice for students who learn differently.
We empower each person. I don't care what their diagnosis is. We don't care what they call it. We don't care what comorbid condition they have. That we know that they have, we don't look at ADHD as being broken. It is a unique brain wiring that in the right situations, these people have a great deal of inner greatness that has been buried.
Hello, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell for Distraction. As my longtime podcast listeners know, one of the themes of my show is connection. We live in the age of distraction, and the antidote is connection. Having meaningful connections is a vital part of living a long and healthy life, and it's especially important to those of us with ADHD. Well, my guest today is at the center of ADHD and connection. He's an old friend. I don't know how many years I've known him, but a long time. His name is David Giwerc, and you spell that Giwerc. He's the founder and president of the ADD Coach Academy, the first and largest comprehensive ADHD coach training program, ADD Coach Academy. But as you'll hear, his programs aren't just for coaches. He is a man of many, many talents. He's run schools, he's run organizations, he's run businesses, and this Coach Academy is a huge service because the whole field of coaching had been sort of wide open. Anyone could call themselves a coach. And so with the Coach Academy, David introduced training, skills, and a level of quality assurance. If you get someone who has been trained at the ADD Coach Academy, you know you'll be getting a good coach. And many people ask me, how do I find a good ADD coach? And my first instruction is to go to the website of the ADD Coach Academy. Well, that's enough of an introduction. I could say much more, but let me just read you one paragraph from David's website. Change the way you look at yourself and others. Our foundational courses, Simply ADHD and Personal Transformation, PT, are a must if you or a loved one struggle with the challenges of ADHD. The courses will help you identify how and where ADHD can impact daily living and help discover the special gifts that bring one's uniqueness to life. So, as you can tell from that paragraph, David very much buys into the strength-based approach with an eye toward giving practical strategies and skills for helping people develop those, or as I like to say, unwrap their gift. So, without further ado, let me welcome David Giwerc to Distraction.
Ned, so great to be here, and I'm honored, and I could speak a lot of things about you. We've known each other for many, many years, but one of the things that we know we have with each other, and we have from a long way back, is connection. It's so important.
Yes. Why don't you tell our listeners the story of how you started the Coach Academy and what went into that?
Well, it's quite an amazing story. I was vice president at a very large ad agency in New York City at the time, and I had just recently read your book. And as a matter of fact, I read the book on my way home, Driven to Distraction, you and John Rady wrote, and I saw it in the window, and I'd always had a difficult time reading. But one of my skill sets was that I was very spontaneous, I was very verbal, I could give presentations off the cuff, and I was creative, but it just didn't work in a lot of settings where I was limited, and the structure was so rigid that I had to do things the way that school dictated or the organization did. But I happened to be in a job where I was given that flexibility, but I knew that there was something very challenging for me, and that was administrative work. It was reading, and I was rising up in the organization, but always feeling like a fraud. You know, you can be really good at something and do well at something, but deep down you just don't feel like you're as good as other people because you're not doing it their way. And I never contemplated the thought of having a unique brain wiring until one day I saw your book, your and John's book, Driven to Distraction, and walked into this bookstore, and literally sat down and read the entire book and closed the store. And I left that store with a whole different perspective. But the perspective that really scared me was they said that adults couldn't have this. Every diagnostician I went to, this is 1992, I'm reading your book, Ned, and I'm saying, well, wait a minute. All these symptoms are exactly what I have. I get distracted easily. If I'm not interested in something, I tune out. I have excess energy. If I want something, I'm impulsive. And yet I knew there was this good side of it. When I was in Albany, New York, where I grew up, and I went to a few docs that claimed they were ADHD docs, and they said, I'm sorry, Mr. Giwerc, I can't diagnose you. You're an adult. Adults don't have it. And I said, you've got to be kidding. So actually, Ned, you don't remember, but I met you at a conference, and it was the ADA conference. And at that time, I said, Ned, what do I do? And you had suggested that maybe you find somebody in Albany Medical School. Wow. And there was actually a psychiatrist at Albany Medical Center who I met. And I walked in there actually knowing as much about ADHD as he did. I was in the ad agency business, Ned. You can imagine I'm the head of an account where the entire creative department is undiagnosed ADHD.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, every single one of them. But I was the only one in the company that really got along well with them because I understood their mindset. So I knew that there was something good about this and something that wasn't. So what happened was, after I'd read the book, I woke up very, very sad. I would almost call it not a biological depression, but a psychological depression, because what I noticed was I was very good at my job, but it was very robotic. It had become linear. I just had become very good at it and knew it, but there was no purpose. There was no meaning. I didn't feel like it got me out of bed every year. It wasn't a calling. And so I happened to read this article. There was this coaching program, Coach University, which happened to be one of the biggest programs at the time. And I called up Thomas Leonard, who was the owner, and I said, Thomas, I'd like to take some coach training. Can I do it at night in addition to my job? So he said, fine. And I went in and I started full-time job as a vice president. I was the youngest vice president, Young and Rubicam, in the ad agency business. And at night, I took training. And while I was reading lots and lots of stuff about ADHD, but seeing it all around me, and what I realized is that the life coaching programs didn't know a damn thing about ADHD. So I was getting very frustrated. So I got my credential after a couple of years as a master certified coach, which meant I had to get 2,000 hours, all these credentials and requirements, and I got them. But what I realized at the time, there was no training for ADHD coaches. I was the only lone ADHD coach out there. I took the life coaching skills and I began to integrate them with my understanding of the neurobiology of ADHD, of the situational variable of ADHD. I saw what interest did. I saw what lack of intention did. And what happened is I started to have great success with them because I understood the mindset of their brain, that because they were brilliant people with strengths, I had to be vigilant in giving them evidence that they truly had strengths, because they didn't believe they had strengths, because their whole lives they had been told what they couldn't do at the expense of what they could do. Now, I didn't have that upbringing. I was very fortunate to have parents who, thank God, survived the Holocaust, and I was a first-generation American who spoke broken English. Well, I was very fortunate to have 3 great teachers, and what they taught me was to embrace curiosity, to embrace creativity, and to embrace the best in yourself. So I just focused on my strengths, whether it was athletics, which happened to be a lot of my self-esteem because academics were so hard. And as I went through this process of identifying my past, as I was becoming a coach and helping others, I realized that I was surrounded by a lot of people that showed characteristics of this thing called ADHD. But I had to gauge myself because I didn't want everybody in the world being ADHD. I remember you wrote a paper on, ADHD-like symptoms. You don't have to have ADHD to have ADHD-like symptoms. And there were a lot of people around me like that. So what happened was I took my coaching knowledge, and I began to keep track of the cases that I had. And what happened was my coaching practice got so big, I had people asking me to do group coaching. So then I did group coaching for 2 or 3 years, and the group coaching got so big that somebody finally came to me and said, Dave, why don't you open up a coach training school? Well, if I was going to do it, I had to go through accreditation. And accreditation is a grueling process. It's about a 3 to 5 year process. But I went ahead and did it through the ICF.
What does that stand for, ICF?
International Coach Federation. They are the life coaching organization. But there was no ADHD coaching body. So Barbara Luther and I decided to get a group of people. We brought in psychologists, we brought in coaches, and I recused myself from being on the board because I felt it was a conflict of interest, but I became a consultant and actually started what is now called the Professional Association of ADD Coaches, which is the only accrediting body that certifies ADHD coaches. So that it came out of my character strengths, which are creativity, social intelligence, kindness, love, and leadership. There's an assessment that we use. It was created by Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, and it's never been used for adults with ADHD. We were the first to do a research study, Russ Ramsey and myself, and we're having an article that we're working on getting published to show what are the strengths that adults with ADHD have. Well, of course, even though it wasn't statistically significant, creativity showed the highest of the ones that came out as strengths by far. And now, because of the work that we've done, and you see what coaching is all about, Ned, is we empower each person. I don't care what their diagnosis is. We don't care what they call it. We don't care what comorbid condition they have, that we know that they have. We don't look at ADHD as being broken. It is a unique brain wiring that in the right situations, these people have a great deal of inner greatness that has been buried.
What was the group you gave the Seligman's test to?
Well, Martin Seligman created a profile called the VIA Character Strengths. If you go to viacharacterstrengths.org, it's a big organization, and it's been taken by 4 million people. And so we went and did a research study where we took 100 people with ADHD, diagnosed, and about 50 to 60 people that did not have ADHD, and we had them take the VIA profile. And then we did all these different kinds of statistics. Russ did. That's not my game.
Who's Russ?
Russ Ramsey. Russ is the head of the CBT program at University of Pennsylvania.
Okay. What did the study show?
Well, the study showed 2 things. First of all, the study showed that in the virtue category of temperance, there is the strength of self-regulation. So we obviously predicted that self-regulation would score lowest amongst adults with ADHD. And we also predicted that perseverance would. These were 2 character strengths that fell into that realm. And they did. I also made a prediction that creativity, humor, and kindness would show up stronger. So 2 things happened. Creativity showed the highest, but it wasn't statistically significant because of our sample. But it showed the highest of any of the character strengths on the positive side of ADHD. And then the second one was humor. Now, what we also did, because our sample was low, we took the 100 sample of ADHDers and we compared them to the VIA character strength profile of 500,000, taking into account that a certain percentage of those would be ADHD, undiagnosed ADHD. And when we took that 100 and compared it to the 500,000 of the VIA profile, the group that had ADHD scored significantly higher in the area of creativity. Now, why is this so interesting, Ned? Is because a lot of research in the last few years has come out. Sean White has shown that young adults with ADHD score much higher on divergent thinking, conceptual expansion, overcoming knowledge constraints. And these are 3 criteria that is an ADHD kind of mindset. And it is consistently being shown that adults and young adults and even children with ADHD in that kind of creative thinking, with those criteria of divergence thinking, lots and lots of ideas for one concept. Conceptual expansion, taking one concept and expanding upon it, and then overcoming knowledge constraints means whatever context of the world I have, I go beyond that. I come up with different names of products. And in fact, I saw this throughout my life in the professional world, where the entrepreneurs that I worked with were much more creative than the neurotypical. So this was a hypothesis that I had that wasn't quite proven, but it was closely proven. But now research is coming out since we did that poster study that is conclusively showing that ADHD and creativity can be linked together as a strength. And I think that is so important when we're coaching people with ADHD, when they don't show statistical skills or math skills, but they have a different, unique way of thinking that's innovative. Innovation is what makes the world tick. These people can be great employees in a lot of different fields of endeavor, and that's what's beginning to happen, slowly but surely.
Yeah.
So that's really important to the profession. And, you know, Ned, when I came into it, like you, my whole philosophy of coaching was I don't look at what they can't do, because what they can't do doesn't activate the brain. I look at for what they already do well and watch them make it even stronger. And what we also do, Ned, is we just don't look at performance strengths, because performance strengths are only as good as the situation or the performance you're in. We've really embraced these character strengths, which are the source of motivation for using your performance strengths. So, for example, Ned, I would love for you to take this character strength thing. I can already tell you what I think some of yours are going to be.
By the way, did you ever publish that paper?
Well, we didn't get it published. That's what we're trying to do right now. We did a poster study at APSARD, and we won one of 4 awards for the poster awards. We just finished, and we're going to submit it for publication.
I think Russ Barkley would take issue and say there's no evidence that people with ADHD are particularly creative.
Yeah. Well, I would love to talk with Russ, because I would have about 6 or 8 research studies that have been done. Yeah. And I would also tell you that Russell Barkley, through my friend Jeff Copper at ATR, has really become a big supporter of coaching.
Yes, that I do know. You know, it's been wonderful. So how long ago did you start your Coach Academy?
21 years ago.
Wow. And now how many coaches have you trained?
Oh, my God, Ned, I don't even know. Let's put it this way, Ned, we're big on certification. And if I've trained, let's say, 500-600 coaches over the years, but I would tell you that there's probably 150 good certified ADHD coaches out there, 150, 200 at the most. We need to get a lot more.
Now, if someone listening to this podcast say, gee, I'd like to become a coach, what should they do? Well,
the first thing they should do is go to our site at addca.com, and you can email info at addca.com, and they'll set you up with an appointment to talk with me if you're interested. Every student that's ever gone through the program goes through me. I put a great deal of emphasis and effort into making sure that the person is the right candidate for coaching, that they know what they're getting themselves into, and understand what a fulfilling career this can be.
And what does it cost to go through the academy?
To be at the basic level, which is about a year program, it's about close to about $6,000, I would say, $5,600 to $6,000. I have to look up the prices, but that's about what it is.
How long does it take?
Well, to be a basic coach can take you anywhere from a year to a year and a half. But when you go through our program at the advanced level, which is about 2.5 to 3 years, you're automatically approved for certification by ICF and PAC. At the basic level, you have to submit 2 recordings with us first, and then the ICF and PAC, and there are behavioral markers and competencies that you're measured against. So it's become, very disciplined profession. I'm very proud of where our profession is going. And I might add to everybody on the call, it was Ned Hollowell that came up with the concept of coaching. I want to give great credit, because And Ned has been a great supporter of mine, but Ned is also a great supporter of quality. That's the truth.
Yeah, no, when I thought of it, put it in Driven to Distraction, some of the big names in the field mocked it and said I thought coaching was for athletes. And and now it is, as you say, a standard part of the toolbox and a very valuable one.
And I might say that's very important to add with Ned on the phone. It's so important to have a great diagnostician. Coaches do not diagnose. We don't treat. What we do is if there's disharmony between someone using a particular medication or they're not making progress, we're going to encourage that client of ours to go back to their doctor and tell them, because there's no way the doctor can know unless the patient tells them, number one. And number two is a lot of times patients go into physicians or psychologists that are diagnosing with very little knowledge of their own ADHD, which makes diagnosis very tough for the physicians and the therapists. So we are part of the physicians and the therapist team, not in terms of diagnosis, but getting them to understand where their ADHD shows up in challenges, what situations, where the big, inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity show up cognitively and physically. So they can go into Ned and say, here's where it shows up. So Ned can have a really good discussion with them in making the proper diagnosis, because it's so hard to make a good diagnosis without good information.
Right. Absolutely. Now, and if people want to take that strength test you mentioned, how do they do that?
Yes. Okay. So they go to VIA, as in Venezuela, Ireland, and America, via characterstrengths.org. And it is a free profile. You fill out, it's about 120 questions, but it goes very quickly. And my recommendation to you is do not think them through too carefully. Answer them spontaneously. You'll get the best results that way. And then you will get a personal profile sent to you.
So while we've been talking, as much as I've been listening to you attentively, I also took the test. And it lists the strengths, starting with number 1, 2, 3.
If you don't mind sharing, what are your top 5?
Number 1 is creativity.
Oh, what a surprise.
Number 2 is love.
Yep.
Number 3 is love of learning.
Yep.
Number 4 is kindness.
Yep.
Number 5 is honesty.
Yep.
Number 6 is spirituality.
Okay.
Number 7 is curiosity.
Okay. Now, here's what we would do with something like this. We would take this profile, and the first thing I would ask you is, when you look at this profile, would you say that these character strengths are essence of your personality that make you come alive?
Yes.
Okay. Would you also say that these character strengths, which we define as the personality, the ingredients of your true essence, your personality, are a pretty accurate description of the things that really motivate you to get things done?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's funny, the bottom 4
yes.
are the ones that I think I'm also, they should be the bottom 4. Self-regulation is number 21.
Yep.
Number 22 is leadership. I'm really not a good leader.
Oh, I don't buy that. Okay, that's the question. Okay, what
number
else?
23 is fairness. I'm really not fair.
Okay.
And number 24 is prudence. I'm definitely not prudent. So
okay, so this is very interesting. Now I'm going to do something with you, Ned, and out of honesty, one of the things that we're going to check right here is when I ask you to think about something in your life where you were very creative, and this creativity came out of a desire of love to be kind to the world. 3 of your 5. Is there anything that comes to mind? And I know that you have a very strong spiritual base too, but we'll keep the spirituality out of it for now.
Right.
When you think about something that you created out of your love for mankind, for people, and the thought that you can't see another person suffering out of kindness, what comes up? What immediately comes up for you?
Well, our children right away.
Okay.
And then the work I do in my office every day. And then the books I write. So those 3 immediately my kids, seeing patients, and the content of my books.
Okay, so let me show you what's so interesting. As I listen to you, in order for you to have been able to access that information from your memory, that's executive function. That is not an easy thing for most people to do. And in order to access that executive function, you had to have had self-regulation. In other words, the moment I asked you that question, self-regulation went from number 24 to number 1, automatically, which just supports, the research that Nora Valco did. ADHD is a deficit of interest. But if we define interest as those things, not that are interesting in the moment, but that we anticipate. So when you anticipate writing a great book, when you anticipate seeing your children, when you anticipate helping another person in a creative, loving way, your self-regulation goes right to the top. And I would also add that you are going to be extremely fair. So these are all 24 capacities. The ones that are lower are referred to as phasic strengths or situational strengths. In certain situations, Ned, self-regulation, fairness, and prudence. Think about the decisions you have to make about your patients. Give them the best. Think about the decisions you have to make about your kids, and think about the decisions you have to make about your books. Obviously, you were very prudent because they were outstanding books, and you did well. So all 4 of your lowest strengths are automatically accessed when you pay attention to your signature strengths. Automatically. So if you were to pay attention to, what is it that I do that I self-regulate myself, without the benefit of your top signature strengths, you would not be able to access your self-regulation. It requires the essence of our motivation. It requires the essence of what makes us tick to really access our executive functions, our ability to pause. So you paused and you paid attention to what you were paying attention to, and what you're paying attention to are the 3 areas that motivate you in your life. And everybody knows you're telling the truth because we all know you, Ned. So you can't fake this.
No, I'm a bad liar. Well, this is so interesting. So for our listeners, if they want to take this test, they go again.
Yeah, it's VIA character.org.
VIA character.org.
.org, yes.
Wonderful. This has been such a fun conversation. We could go on and on. David and I want to produce some event together because we have a shared vision in so many ways. But what you've done for the world of coaching is just remarkable. And your disciples are, like Carolyn McGuire is out there doing wonderful work with her book on social coaching, and the title of her book, Why Won't Anyone Play With Me?
Yes, she's doing fantastic work.
Yeah, and you have many loyal followers who have become leaders in coaching, and it's just fantastic.
Man, it's people like you who helped us get there and supported us, and none of us can do this alone, and it really is. It's a connection. We have an amazing community, I must say, in the ADHD world. For all the challenges we go through, we have some very loyal, loving, connecting people that, like yourself, who've been very supportive of us, and I really appreciate that.
Well, we're coming together and gaining strength all the time. I think it's a very different world in 2020 than it was when I first learned about this condition in 1981, so I love your story of discovering it by reading my book in one sitting in the bookstore. That's a great story.
Saved my life.
Well, you're so kind to say it. David, we have to wrap up, but thank you so much for doing this, and you're just a wonderful luminary in the field, and very grateful to you. And listeners, please take that test. Go to David's. What's the website again?
It's addca.com. ADCA.com.
So addca.com, and you can learn there if you want to become a coach. It's a wonderful occupation, part-time job, a full-time job for some people, and it's a wonderful way that you can really get into a field of helping people without having to go to medical school or get a PhD. And but the training you get is very valuable. This is not puff at all. It's very solid, and And you really do get into people's lives. Believe me, that when I refer people to coaches, I have several favorite coaches. They are instrumental in changing lives. So if you want to get into a helping profession and really get into the nuts and bolts of people's lives, this is one way you can do it without, taking a second mortgage and for under $10,000, come out with a really valuable set of skills. I really recommend it to you. Okay, David Giwerc, thank you so much, my friend, for coming on Distraction.
Yes, thank you, Ned, and we'll talk soon. And thank you for all the great work you've done over the years.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks so much, David. Well, that's all for today's episode. I am very grateful to David Giwerc. He's a very busy man, and he gladly took time out of his schedule to come on and think about a coaching career. It's a wonderful job, and as I said, you can get the training for not a king's ransom in terms of money, and it's truly valuable. You really get into people's lives in a significant, life-changing kind of way. Okay, remember to reach out to us with your questions and show ideas. We love getting them. Our email address is connect@distractionpodcast.com. That's connect@distractionpodcast.com. You can write your question down or record it as a voice memo on your phone and send it to us. Most phones do have a voice recorder or voice memo app on them. If you just look around, you'll find it. Just click on the app and then hit the red button to record your question or comment. We love hearing your voices, so please give it a shot. Again, our email address is connect@distractionpodcast.com. Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. Our recording engineer and editor is the experienced, wise, Yoda-esque Pat Keogh. And our producer is the brilliant, extraordinarily creative Sarah Guertin.